Welcome back to Sophie and Jumong Part 36. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and tap the notification bell so you won't miss any part. The sun rose over the Namibian horizon with a softness that felt almost divine. Birds chirped lazily in the trees as the villagers began to gather along the main dirt road that curved toward Sophie's homestead. Children had climbed onto rooftops. Women wrapped in bright fabrics held their babies close. Young men leaned against thorn trees, craning their necks toward the road. Then the ground began to hum. At first it was faint, just a distant tremble. But then it grew louder, steadier. A convoy was coming. And what arrived was beyond anyone's imagination. One by one, 13 black limousines, long and sleek, rolled into view. The sun caught on their polished bodies, reflecting like a procession of stars. Gasps broke out. People stepped back instinctively. Many had never seen one limousine in their lives, let alone 13, perfectly spaced, each one decorated with gold embroidery, flowers, and silk ribbons in red, white, and green. A sound wave of awe swept through the air. Drums erupted from the far end of the homestead as the village welcomed the guests in song. A traditional choir of young girls in beads and sashes sang loudly, stepping rhythmically as their feet stirred the red dust. Older women followed, ululating in celebration. Each limousine slowly pulled up toward the central courtyard of Sophie's home. In the first car, Chairman Lee emerged in a crisp, traditional Korean robe embroidered with golden African motifs. His expression was solemn, but proud. Madam Lee stepped out beside him in a luminous turquoise shawl, her silver earrings catching the light. From the second limousine, Dong Hyun, Chairman Lee's identical twin and Jumong's biological father, stepped out with a calm presence, wearing dark ceremonial robes, nodding in respect to Sophie's family. From the third, Elias, dressed smartly in a tan blazer, carried a scroll tied in silk, likely Jumong's formal letter of commitment. Gina and her mother followed in the fourth limousine, both glowing with excitement, their hair wrapped elegantly. Behind them came two of Jumong's cousins, dressed in custom-tailored outfits blending Korean and African patterns. The remaining limousines carried three of Jumong's CEO friends, each accompanied by either a spouse or a personal assistant, and then one limousine came to a stop, and its doors weren't opened. It carried the gifts. Inside were gold bars, rare gemstones, ceremonial cloths, and title deeds. And at the end of the line, the final limousine door opened. Jumong stepped out. He wore a deep royal blue outfit trimmed with gold. A layered robe rested on his shoulders, with beadwork that mirrored Namibia's tribal markings. On his chest, a gold pendant in the shape of Africa lay over his heart. His face was calm, his eyes steady. But there was something in his gaze that said, "I know why I'm here." Sophie's uncle, her late father's elder brother, came forward to welcome the guests. He bowed low before Chairman Lee, who returned the bow with equal respect. From the homestead entrance, Sophie watched unseen, her breath catching in her throat. The sight of her groom arriving with so much honor and humility filled her chest with pride. Villagers continued to sing and dance, welcoming the delegation as they were escorted to the ceremonial tent. The ceremonial tent was set at the heart of the courtyard. White and tan cloth billowed in the wind, and woven mats formed a beautiful aisle. Carved chairs faced one another. On the left side, Sophie's family. On the right, Jumong's. An elder woman began the ceremony with a prayer, her voice rising in waves. It was a spiritual moment, calling in the ancestors and asking for divine favor over the union. Then Sophie's uncle stood. "Today we are here to accept the man who has asked for our daughter's hand, but first, tradition requires he proves how much he values her." He paused and looked directly at Chairman Lee. "As is our custom, and in honor of her dignity, we ask for a dowry of 100 cows." Gasps rippled through the crowd. It was a bold request. But no one could have predicted what came next. Chairman Lee stood calmly. His voice was low but steady. "On behalf of my son Jumong, we have not come to bargain. We have come to honor. You ask for 100 cows. We offer the equivalent of 10,000 cows." There was silence. And, he continued, as a gift to Sophie, $1 million in gold bars has already been transferred to her personal account. The silence snapped. The crowd erupted in gasps and joy. Some women screamed, others ululated. Men leapt to their feet, children clapped. People stared at the unopened limousine where guards now carefully lifted the chest filled with velvet-lined gold bars. "He is a billionaire," someone cried. "He owns his own jet," another gasped. "This is not just love, it's royalty." Even Madame Lee, always composed, covered her mouth with both hands. Tears rimmed her eyes. McKenna and her sisters, seated near the front, nearly fainted. One leaned back with wide eyes. 10,000 cows, she whispered. $1 million? Jumong watched them all with a quiet, steady gaze. And Gina? She smiled. She had known all along. Elias gave a knowing nod. Jumong's love for Sophie was not a show. It was who he was. As the songs and drumming grew louder, Jumong's eyes scanned the people, the elders blessing him, the children dancing in red dust, the women singing his name. But his eyes rested on one place longer than any other, Sophie. Hidden behind a thin veil, she watched him too. And in that moment, memories came flooding back to him. He remembered the first day they met at the hotel. When he asked about her studies, she had told him she was pursuing medicine. Then she had added something that had stayed with him ever since. Hope doesn't bring food to the table. I want to be the kind of doctor who gives back to my people. I want to do something real, something lasting. That sentence had never left him. It had etched itself into his mind like a silent promise. From that moment, Jumong had already begun planning. He and Elias had spoken about it in private. Together, they had made arrangements, discreet, thorough, and quietly powerful. Gifts were exchanged. Elders from both sides embraced. A clay pot of blessings was passed around. Sophie's family gifted Jumong a symbolic shield and spear, not for war, but protection. In return, Jumong's family gave fine silk, ceramics, and coins blessed in Korean temples. Dancing erupted across the village. The celebrations spilled into the fields, meat roasted over fires, mahangu porridge was served in calabashes. Toddlers danced, mimicking the grown-ups. Teenagers sang. Old men raised their hands in prayer. Then Sophie's uncle rose once more. From this day forward, he said, we accept Jumong as a son of this family. He is no longer a visitor. He is the husband of Sophie. Our doors, our hearts, and our legacy are now joined with his. Cheers and tears followed. The declaration was complete. Meanwhile, in Korea, the broadcast went viral. News anchors paused their segments. Hashtags exploded. Sophie and Jumong, or Namibia Royal Wedding, 10,000 cows, real love. Millions watched from homes, phones, airports, and cafes. This is bigger than a love story, one Korean commentator said. This is cultural diplomacy. This is legacy. In Namibia, radio hosts broke from programming. We've never seen this before. She has become a symbol of hope. By 2 o'clock, the traditional ceremony had reached its joyful end. The sun now hung overhead as the final blessing was spoken. The dust began to settle. The gold was safely locked away. Sophie was surrounded by her cousins, adjusting her veil. Transport arrangements had already been made. Sophie and her mother had organized for several minibuses and private cars to transport guests. Most of the guests proceeded to the church where the holy matrimony would take place. Others were directed straight to the gardens, where the reception was set in white tents, floral decor, and a soft breeze waiting to carry laughter through the trees. Jumong did not accompany Sophie. She was going to change into her white wedding dress. She had worn traditional attire for the ceremony, but now she would be unveiled again in a new glow. And so the journey continued. They were now on their way to the church, where Sophie and Jumong would stand once more. This time, not just before family, but before heaven itself. By mid-afternoon, the celebration moved to the local church, decorated in white, gold, and soft blue. The church was overflowing. Villagers, friends, dignitaries, and the entire Korean delegation were seated respectfully. Every eye was fixed on the grand wooden doors at the back. Jumong stood at the altar in a cream suit with soft golden embroidery, tailored to perfection. He had never looked more composed, yet his fingers twitched slightly as he waited. His heart beat faster with every passing second. Elias stood to his side, quietly steady. Across the first row sat Chairman Lee, stoic but visibly moved. To his left, Madame Lee, wrapped in a silk pastel blue hanbok, clutched a satin handkerchief. Her face betrayed something deeper, a joy she hadn't expected, and a quiet pang of reflection. "She is not what I imagined," she thought. "She is better." Beside her, Dong Hyun watched with admiration and wonder, nudging Ha Jun, who leaned forward to see better. Gina's mother, calm and graceful, sat beside Hae Jin and Seo Yeon, both of whom whispered with excitement, eyes sparkling. Then the doors opened. The hush that followed felt like time had paused. Sophie stood in the archway, radiant in a flowing white gown with intricate beaded patterns along the bodice and sleeves, her veil falling gently over her shoulders. In her hands, a bouquet of desert lilies, roses, and native Namibian blooms. But it was not her mother who led her down the aisle. Her uncle, the brother of her late father, stood tall beside her, dressed in traditional ceremonial robes with gold accents. His eyes were watery, his back straight with pride. He whispered, "You're walking for your father today. He would have been proud." Sophie nodded, lips trembling, then took her first step. The organ music rose gently, mixing with ululations from the women at the back of the church. As she walked, whispers floated in the air. "She's beautiful. Look at her glow. Her father's people are here. It is complete." Children peeked from behind pews. Some women cried softly. Jumong's breath caught. When he saw her, everything else disappeared. His heart thudded in his chest. He forgot the people, the cameras, the world. There was only her. When Sophie reached him, her uncle placed her hand in Jumong's. "She is now yours to protect." Jumong bowed respectfully. "I will." The priest stepped forward. He smiled warmly at the couple. "We are gathered here today to join this man and this woman in holy matrimony, not just as a tradition, but as a vow between hearts, cultures, and families." The ceremony was spoken in both English and softly translated in Korean for the guests. When the time came, the priest looked at Jumong. "Do you, Jumong, take Sophie to be your lawfully wedded wife, to love her, cherish her, protect her, and walk with her in all seasons of life?" Jumong did not hesitate. "I do," he said. His voice echoed with strength and joy. A quiet cheer rippled from the guests. The priest turned to Sophie. "And do you, Sophie, take Jumong to be your lawfully wedded husband, to honor him, support him, walk beside him in peace and in trial, and to grow with him in all things?" Sophie looked up into his eyes, her voice steady. "I do." The crowd erupted. Applause, ululation, and music burst into life. "Then by the authority given to me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. What God has joined together, let no one put asunder. Jumong, you may kiss your bride." Jumong stepped forward, lifted her veil slowly, reverently. Their eyes met, and the kiss was gentle, respectful, sacred, a sealing of all things promised. Outside, a camera flashed. The Korean delegation stood and applauded warmly. Even Madame Lee, her eyes damp, stood with pride. Someone beside her whispered, "She is glowing like a mother." And for the first time, she accepted it. The church doors opened. Sophie and Jumong walked out hand in hand into the blinding sunlight and the roar of the community waiting beyond. The celebration had only just begun. The reception grounds buzzed with joy and pride. Guests filled the grand marquee, which was adorned with ivory roses, woven fabrics from both Namibia and Korea, and soft lanterns that glowed like stars under the late afternoon sky. Waiters moved gracefully between tables, refilling glasses and offering refreshments. Laughter and cheerful chatter floated on the breeze as the newlyweds, Sophie and Jumong, walked hand in hand toward the center stage. Traditional dancers had already performed, a mix of Namibian and Korean performances that captivated the crowd. Elders smiled, children clapped. Even foreign dignitaries were seen swaying to the music. Suddenly, Elias tapped the microphone. The hall quieted. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced with a warm grin, "please welcome Mr. Jumong." The applause thundered. He looked out over the sea of faces, his expression both humble and steady. "Today is not just a day of marriage," he began, his voice deep and confident. "It is a day where destiny, love, and purpose met." He turned slightly to look at Sophie. "I did not meet Sophie by coincidence. She came into my life as a quiet servant at a hotel, not to serve me, but because her friend Gina was sick and Sophie stepped in to cover her shift. She served with dignity and grace." The crowd leaned in, captivated. That evening, when I asked her what she studied, she told me medicine. And not only that, but she told me about her dream, how she wanted to use her skills to develop her community back home. Her eyes lit up as she spoke. It was the first moment I realized I was not speaking to a worker. I was speaking to a leader, a healer, a future changer. He turned fully to the audience now, his voice growing stronger. From that very moment, I began to make plans. Plans not only for my life, but for hers, too. For her people. For this land that gave me her. Gasps rose among the guests. Sophie's mother brought her hand to her mouth, tears forming. McKenna stared ahead, her mouth open in disbelief. The evil she had wished had vanished. Sophie's friends clutched each other's hands, trembling. They had never witnessed such a public declaration of love and commitment, not just to a woman, but to a nation. But love should never stop at one person. Love must grow. Love must give. He motioned for his assistant, who walked up holding a velvet scroll and several sleek black folders. Jumong held them up. "Tonight I pledge the following, not as a guest, but as a son of this soil." He unrolled the scroll, and the screen behind him lit up with designs of buildings, blueprints, and logos. "First, we will build a fully equipped hospital, right here in this region, with the latest technology, 24-hour emergency service, maternity care, and specialist wings. It will be free for all who live here." Gasps rippled through the crowd, eyes widened. A grandmother stood, hands over her mouth. "Second," Jumong said, holding up another folder, "we will establish a primary and secondary school on land already secured. No school fees. Full meals, trained teachers, uniforms provided." Cheers began, but he raised his voice gently over them. "Third, we will fund the construction of a university with departments in medicine, engineering, education, and the arts. Right here in Namibia. Scholarships will be available for girls and boys equally. And this promise is made to honor the most important person in Sophie's life, her mother." A new wave of applause surged. Women rushed to Sophie's mother, hugging her, blessing her. Some kissed her hands. She cried silently, smiling. Photographers nearly blinded Sophie now, capturing her stunned joy. The cameras loved her. Children surrounded her seat, staring at her as if she were royalty. "One day," a girl whispered, "I want a man like that." Jumong's fathers, Chairman Lee and Dong Hyun, watched with silent pride. They nodded at each other. Chairman Lee's voice was low, choked with emotion. "He has become the man we hoped for." Dong Hyun clasped his hands together, smiling. His heart finally felt peace. Elias clapped endlessly, standing up with pure happiness. And when the time came, as the music softened and guests began to prepare to leave, Jumong gently helped Sophie into the black limousine. As the engine hummed and the door closed behind them, he looked at her and whispered, "From this day on, we don't just build a life, we build a legacy." The limousine pulled away as the village waved, danced, and sang behind them, their lives forever changed.